Good morning. Welcome to the June meeting of the Pitt County Department of Social Services Board. We'd like to begin this meeting, as we always do, with a moment of silent prayer or silent meditation, please. Thank you. Today, as we begin our meeting, you have in your place a copy of today's agenda. Are there any revisions or additions that we need to make to the agenda, please? All right, with none, may I have a motion to accept this agenda?
I make a motion we accept the agenda.
Say aye.
Aye.
All right, you also have in your packet a copy of the previous meeting's minutes. If there are no revisions to that, may I have a motion to accept those minutes as they are.
I'll offer a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
All right.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Perry, you want to give us an update on the status of our agency personnel?
At the present time, we have 32 vacant positions within the Pitt County Department of Social Services. We have 25 positions that are frozen. We have filled one of the positions, which was 674906 Adult Services. Social Worker 2, that person started working today. I will begin with Ms. Florida Hardy to see what the process will be for unfreezing these positions, how we move forward since the county budget has been approved. So the next step is seeing what the process will be for unfreezing the positions and how we'll go about getting those positions done. Our main focus will be on food and nutrition services and the administrative position at the front desk, because we need someone to sign people in and to answer the telephone. And we in the process of beginning NC Fast with our food and nutritional service that will go live on August the 6th. So we need to make sure that we are in the process of getting those positions filled so that we can have that help that we need as we move forward there.
Okay. The two positions you have at the bottom listed as abolished.
We have 6 positions that we will be abolishing. We have abolished one that was in the homeless, I think HPRP preventive unit we did in February, and then we have 5 positions that we had to abolish to balance our budget for the upcoming year. So those are the positions that we will abolish.
So these are basically cuts you made
Right.
to balance the budget.
And they will not show up in the chart for the upcoming year.
All right. And of course, impact of that is we'll note that when we're doing the quarterly goals and
yeah.
objectives review.
The majority of those cuts would be in administrative. We have 3 administrative positions that we will be cut. The clerk to the board, it appears that Ms. Angela Hart will be filling in on a permanent basis for that, since the position of Ms. Sherry Farmer is one of those
Right.
positions that we will abolish. So we're just trying to position the agency as we move forward for the upcoming year.
Okay. Any questions around the status of agency?
I guess you were talking about the impact, and we'll talk about that in quarterly goals. What do you think is going to be the impact of some of these, because we're losing in work first, emergency services, prevention, and 2, which are really important,
Yeah.
in the fiscal office, so we're losing the money.
One in the fiscal office is working with the daycare unit. If we move forward with the SEEK process, that will cut down on what we need to do in that area. But we were lucky this year that we were able to work with the county manager to use some temporary funds to bring someone in to work in that program until we begin the SEEK process. So hopefully as we move forward in the upcoming year, if the SEEK program does not move as fast as it should be, that we'll be able to bring someone in to work temporary to continue to help out in the processing of those daycare applications.
And all these frozen positions, I mean, it just seems like a lot compared to where we had been being. And I don't know about the rest of the members, it just feels like this is a substantial workforce shortage.
We have 11 as a result of retirements. That will be 9 in July and 2 in September. So we have So that increased our frozen positions.
Right, but when you have someone leave for whatever reason, whether it's intentional or whatever, you're not able to control the impact because there are certain categories of workers.
Right.
So, given that if someone leaves, we just freeze that slot, it looks like we're imbalancing the workforce a bit.
We are imbalanced when you look at food and nutrition service and the family, children Medicaid, adult Medicaid. Those are the units that have the higher caseloads. But what we have tried to do is take the 2 lead workers that we have in food and nutrition service, that they carry a caseload at the present time, and the supervisor responsible for all the day-to-day operations, answering questions or whatever. But beginning July the 1st, we will lose one of the lead workers is retiring, so that would be another vacant position. And we have been able to try to pass the report cards. That's one of the things that we have to do. So we have, except for May, we failed in May, but we've been trying to pass the report cards, do the minimum amount necessary to keep things running, make sure that the clients, if they apply for services, that we're able to process those applications timely, and staff working overtime to earn comp time because they cannot do it during the regular 8 hours a day. So we're doing those things.
So, remind us, the total number of employees is what?
What's the total number at the present time? 230,
Budget, I think, is 227.
227.
So you have 15% of your workforce frozen. Those numbers, and that's
Yeah.
in addition to what you had cut in the previous
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
You move forward, so it seems as though it is a pretty substantial.
Pretty substantial. At the same
But
time.
we've got the measurement tools in place that would
Right.
tell you if that much of a gap is creating a backlog or a problem.
Staff has been able to maintain, but with NC Fast coming, they will not be able to maintain because that will require that all application be keyed into a new system.
Yeah.
So that will require people learning that skill and moving forward. So
Mr.
we'll
Mayor.
have that issue. That's why that was one of the reasons that we tried to move
Right.
to get the food stamp position filled first.
Mr.
I
Mayor.
think following that line of questioning, when we look at these and it titles it by what it does, and you spoke to one, but have you prioritized each of these areas so that as things are unfrozen for a special program, or like you just mentioned that's coming, is there a priority?
Yeah, we have those numbers right on.
That's what this priority schedule on the side is. So
On the side.
the lower number is the
Priority.
higher priority, or the
Higher-
Higher number, like one, start with 1, 2, 3, those are.
so the higher the
High
number,
priority.
the more priority
Right.
it is.
Okay,
So those are the number on the priority list.
so a priority 4 would be way over a priority 20 or 11.
Priority 4 would be if we're able to unfreeze 4 or 5 positions, priority 4 would be in the 4th position that we will fill. So we're looking at like 1 would be, we have that fiscal officer, that public information assistance 4. That would be 1 because that's someone that we need at the front desk to, when clients come in, to be seen and to answer the switchboard. So we looked at.
I don't want us to get too far in the details of the management of this. I think our concern is just simply that you have measurement
Visible.
tools
Yeah.
that will in fact prioritize this in a way that we would know, you would know, if services are being affected by that, and we're comfortable we have those systems
We
in
have that in
place.
place.
Okay.
And so that I can
And it
get
would
with
probably
Ms.
be
Hart.
worthwhile to make sure the direct correlations are made when we do goals and objectives reviews, that particularly in areas where, as Mr. May was just pointing out, we've just got a large number in one category, food and nutrition as an example, then that ought to, we would like to see that as a report back to the board as to what has been the impact on food and nutrition from delays of, of service or error rates or any of those kind of things that we can map back specifically to that. Does that meet with the rest of the board members?
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments around status? And let me just say to those who are not in here today because you're working in food and nutrition and all those different areas, how much we appreciate the fact that with our fiscal condition across the state and nation, certainly here in Pitt County, we're no different, and making adjustments to the way in which we deliver services is unfortunately something that we kind of have to meet with a little bit of change management and making sure that folks are comfortable with the process, but ultimately that the citizens get the same level of care that we are mandated to do. Okay. But thank you to all of you who are absorbing the increased workload. We have 3 reports to the board today before we go into closed session. The first of those is around the 5th member appointments to the board. Mr. Perry?
Mr. Brian Floyd position will run out this month, and he is the position that is appointed by the other 4 members of the board. In your packet, you have information showing that that position will expire on June the 30th, 2012, and the other 4 board members need to appoint the 5th member. So we have 2 of you here today so that we can get the information submitted to the state so they would know who the 5th board member is.
So at this point, you're asking for nominations from the board
Yes.
today to fill that
That's
seat.
Phil Bryan position.
Not the, it is not the chairman's seat, it is the 5th member of the board seat.
That's not the chairman, vice chairman.
No, we will
No,
do
sir.
that in
That will
July.
happen.
July,
That will
yeah.
happen in the July meeting. This is about determining who will be the 5th member.
Do we have, and I didn't see it, maybe I didn't look closely, do we have a list of names of
No.
those people that have applied?
They do not apply for
This is an
position.
appointment.
This is an
Okay.
appointment. By that, you as the board selects the 5th member.
Well, this is an opportunity where we can submit names toward that. I guess Mr. Mayo's question is, do we solicit, since we're going to appoint the 5th member, the pool from which we
No.
select those
No, we do not.
individuals, we don't do that normally?
No, we do not normally solicit. What it is that you have contact within the community, and it lists that you're encouraged to consider men and women who are representative of different ethnic groups. So it's a matter of you as the board decide who you want that 5th member to be. The Social Service Commission and the county commissioners, they normally have a list of people that are interested in applying for the positions, and then they pick from that list. But we normally do not ask
So today here, we put forth names.
and put forth names, and the group votes on who they want as that 5th member.
I will put out a name of Glenn Saldana. He is a representative from Vidant Medical Center, but he is also an executive in charge of post-acute care, rehabilitation, and some of those services that work closely with social services and in-home care kind of models. I've also been given the name Becky Starkey.
Yes.
Has expressed interest in becoming the next board.
And she is,
She has, I think you have some better background information than
I
I.
think he used to work here, retired several years ago, so worked here for many years and has a keen interest in the work that we do at social services, and has a good working knowledge of the organization, has always, even after her retirement, has continued to be a strong supporter of our efforts, within the organization. So she had expressed an interest in becoming a board member.
I think in fairness, does anyone else have names you'd like?
No.
So what I think I'd like to do, I think the method of how we do this today is introduce the fact that we need to select the next member of the board. The actual vote to select someone could happen at the next meeting when you've had time to have a bio of individuals to look at. So over the next week, I would ask that you submit names to me via
Okay.
email, and any bio or brief information about that individual and that sort of thing. And do they have the ability, Mr. Perry, to fill this form out? This meets requirements, I know, for
I
for that.
could
Is that
email
okay?
this to you, and you could
Okay.
get them to fill out the information.
Perfect, perfect. So you'll send this to me. Names that you would like to recommend on the board can go fill this out with a brief bio, and then we can circulate that information. And at the next board meeting, we can then vote and select on the
That's a
individual.
way more.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you
And,
don't have anything, it's just,
Yeah,
do you have a
yeah,
name?
we'll do it that way.
Too risky.
Any other questions around the next member appointment? So that's the process we'll use. And be prepared at the next meeting, because we also need to have Ms. Perkin and also Mr. James the ability to submit names, and they're not here with us today. Okay. Mr. Perry, does that take care
That's
of that?
taken care of
Okay.
it.
So now we have a report to the board on the Elder Abuse Prevention Month program. Cynthia Ross.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Ross. I'm an Adult Protective Services social worker with Pitt County DSS, and Shannon Carter, my coworker, is here to assist. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Margaret Dixon asked our agency or our unit to make a presentation. This may be more information than you ever wanted to know, but if you'll indulge me, I've become very passionate about this and how it affects our citizens. I've prepared some information, and most of it is what's on the slide, but I'll try and highlight some information for you that you may already be very much aware of. First, there's kind of some global definitions of what elder abuse is nationally, how people view elder abuse. And I have listed that out for you, but in particular in North Carolina, that law was created in 1973. North Carolina was one of the first states to create an elder law. The current law was amended in 1975. So we are acting under a very old law, but our law differs from some states in that we actually deal with a population of age 18 and older, but all the individuals in that population are disabled. The most common form of abuse that we address is neglect, is where we see most of our reports come from. We want to look at who is at risk for. Most commonly, people think of elder abuse when you talk about it, and they just think everything goes on in the nursing homes and how horrible it is that all of our elders are in nursing homes and they're so mistreated. But what we find in our community, and actually when I began to do some research, is that it's happening everywhere. Probably only about less than 10%, closer to 5% of our reports are actually individuals living in facilities. The majority of individuals that are subjected to abuse and neglect are those who are living in our community. We looked at who was most vulnerable of that population. They indicated statistically that women and individuals age 80 and over were probably the most prone to being victims. There's a lot of different theories about why that occurs and why it's occurring in our homes. A lot of it is a sign of the times. There's rampant problem with substance abuse, mental illness, individuals that are living in our community. The economy has resulted in decreased services for those individuals, and a lot of them are living with their elder parents. So there's a lot of individuals that are being cared for by elderly parents. Among those parents, they are facing their own aging issues, and they are trying their best to support individuals who are mentally ill and have substance abuse problems. There's many, many multi-generational households that we're seeing out there. People who are financially dependent on the elderly as a result of the economy. We're seeing an increase in Pitt County, but really, across North Carolina of misuse of power of attorneys. People selling parents' properties and accessing the funds that elders have conserved over the years in order to support themselves. We want to look at, felt like you guys might be interested in what it looks like in North Carolina. I love numbers. I'm a numbers person. I love statistics. And we looked at the reports just over the last 5 years that were available to us, and the number of reports, increase every year. When I calculated the percentages between the years, the least percentage was 7%, and the most percentage was 11%. So if we go from year to year and increase as much as 11% in the number of reports, and it's estimated that only 1 in 5 of actual occurrences of abuse are reported. So that we're talking about a substantial number of individuals out there.
And you might have said it, but what is, of those reported, what is the percentage that you find are legitimate or that you validate?
I don't have that statistic.
So this is the number
the number of reports
received, not necessarily the number of validated
incidences
of misuse.
No, and I apologize, it's very hard to quantify that, because these statistics are based on actual, numbers of reports that are received in North Carolina, and that statistic is captured. I can do some numbers and find out how many incidences are confirmed, but when you start to break the numbers apart, they get really confusing because you have incidences of confirmed mistreatment, but they're not substantiated adult protective services reports. So it gets real bogged down in our definition and how we calculate our numbers.
And the method for someone to report mistreatment is what exactly? That it's being databased somewhere, so how does it get into the database?
Okay, how an individual reports mistreatment is they contact the Department of Social Services. The Department of Social Services generates a report. It's a several-page document where we receive that information. Then that report is screened in as to whether it meets the criteria or not.
So it's fair to say then that some clients may not have the ability to report to the department.
Right. And when I researched, there's gross numbers that are unreported. As far as how much the actual occurrence is. There's a population that doesn't contact and report for themselves. They don't call in seeking and saying, I'm a victim. There's a lot of stigma of, if I'm an elder individual and I'm calling because I'm a victim because my son has abused me either financially
Right.
or, I fear the repercussions of him. So you've got many individuals for many reasons who don't report. Our reports traditionally come from the community, somebody outside of the family unit that calls about an individual.
I was wondering, I was looking at the jump from 2007 to 2011. What do you, because that's about 5,500 more reports. What do you think caused that?
If I had to guess, I've been specifically in adult protective services since 1996. I would say the economy, the decline in our mental health services would probably be the two areas that I would most identify. I am chronically having to take people to the hospital for involuntary commitments because of mental illness and the lack of supportive services in the community. That affects the individuals that are 18 and older, but that affects our elderly citizens as well because many of them are supporting their adult children that are suffering with mental illness. So certainly that is what I would attribute. And the economy, people are just so financially dependent on others, so there's an increase in reports of exploitation. We are just now beginning to see reports from banks where, we'll get calls from some financial fraud unit, way across the United States reporting about something that's happened with a customer.
Yeah, I'm periodically involved with some of these. I'm a psychologist. That's why I think we've talked a couple of
We
times.
have.
And, I do kind of see a big change there. The other thing is that you can report anonymously,
Yes, sir.
which is also important, that people know they don't have to give their name or identifying information and just say, this is what I'm thinking, and you guys will take it from there.
Yes, sir. We'll take all that information.
Do you track and trend the underlying medical conditions of these individuals?
Currently, again, the way in which statistics are handled, the way in which information is gathered, is not as backdated to 1975, but it is way behind the times. The state of North Carolina, we have a reporting system in which reports that are screened in, I report at the closing of that case, the information about the perpetrator and information about the victim. But medical diagnosis will be lumped as one thing, or mental illness will be lumped as one thing. We do track contributing factors for the individuals, but it hasn't nearly caught up with the complicated situations that individuals are in.
So you don't see the increase you alluded to earlier that kind of said it might be consistent with the economy and consistent with other things. You don't necessarily see a correlation to a certain population of patients, though. So I guess what I'm getting at, does a declination in the mental health system in general, does an absence of access to mental health services, is that creating, you mentioned constantly having to take people to the hospital for involuntary commission, all those things. Is that, is somehow that playing into the sharp increase in numbers?
I would have to look at, it's called an Adult Protective Services Register, so I would have to pull from there, from the state. The state does keep data on that. I don't personally have that. I'm speaking from just personal
And I'm asking
experience.
just out of curiosity about the actions that we would do to try to get this going back in the other direction. Implies that there's a drill down into what exactly is going on, and then what would be the single intervention that might have an impact on reducing that. If it's that the problem we've got is most of that is mental health patients that are underserved, then we certainly don't want to just have the default mechanism for those kinds of numbers just being involuntary commitment. So it could be in our best interest to create a secondary vehicle to avoid that as a community, because obviously the community absorbs the impact of when we have to deliver care or deliver services to someone in the most costly environment. That's not good for all of us. So I wonder what our action plan is to get at that number that's now gone in the last few years from 14,000 to 20,000.
Yeah, I'll address in a few minutes. There was a task force that met on Adult Protective Services that met from 2002 to 2006. I was privileged to serve on that task force, and out of that came a tremendous amount of recommendations of how the program should be rewritten to address the needs today. But again, that even predates some of the economy decline, and now that information is dated. A lot of the lack of implementation for that was funding. They designed a system to address many of these things as far as providing protection, not in the preventive arena, but what to do when we do occur. And recommendations came out of that task force to create a pilot to serve in 9 counties. So I'm hoping that in the future will become
It
an
may just
opportunity
be
again.
my interest just being closer to some of the on this particular issue, but it's a real problem for our communities when we have to pay that bill, we collectively.
Yes, sir.
It's all using up the social services funding stream, and we're putting it into a very cost prohibitive environment, probably on things that can be managed in a different way, that we just need to build a mechanism to do that. Anyway, sorry for interrupting you.
I was just going to add, one of the things I just see anecdotally when I'm called in, and what we see is there is a lot of neglect and frustration, and also it seems like it is going up, but a lot of it is from mental health reasons, and there's always the question of why that person was not able to respond.
One of the issues that we expect to see as well, let me address some of the Pitt County numbers for you quickly, in case you're interested in how we look at among these numbers. In 2011, you see the 19,635 reports. Of that, 243 of those were received in Pitt County. I looked at surrounding counties, Pitt, Beaufort, Lenoir, Wilson, and Edgecombe, and we were the highest in numbers of the surrounding counties, with Beaufort being next with 216, Lenoir being next with 140, Wilson 103, and Edgecombe 65. So we certainly received more reports in our county than our surrounding counties. One of the vulnerable populations that I mentioned a few minutes ago that are at risk are those who are 80 and over. I was able to locate some statistics of our current population. In Pitt County, we have 10% of our current population is age 65 and up. By 2030, the next slide, shows that we are in the second category of expecting an increase between 100 and 149% increase in that population by 2030. That's over the next 18 years. And Pitt is behind large counties like Wake. So we are expecting significant growth in that particular population. So I would expect, as our Adult Protective Services report stays on that same trend with this aging population, would again cause another increase. This is what you were addressing earlier about how this affects everybody. Certainly it comes down to cost. Everything that I could come up with of what our effects are locally, tax our Medicaid system and tax what we expect. We have an increase in hospitalizations that's related to neglect. That's individuals that are living in our community that are on medications and are not getting those medications as prescribed for whatever reason. They're not able to understand their medications. They don't have somebody there to help them. They go in the hospital. They say, yes, I'm taking my medications. They're not working, so they increase. And so their medical conditions just continue to get worse by the lack of care that's going on in the community. They get stabilized in the hospital and back discharged. I think that can be true for the individuals with medical diagnoses as well as the individuals that are coming in on out of the hospital for mental illness reasons. Secondly, as a result of that, we have increased cost to Medicaid and prescriptions, and then we have, of course, the whole issue of the exploitation of individuals' prescriptions, the misuse that's going on out in the community, the stealing of medications that are essential for our citizens. We do find exploitation of individuals' prescriptions, where they're just taking disabled adults' prescriptions. Many of the victims that we have, that we address in Adult Protective Services that have been victims of abuse, neglect, and exploitation end up with no other resolution other than placement. By a lack of community resources, a lack of services that are available to them, results in placement. And for many, that's another tax on our Medicaid system. So for me, it's something I'm very passionate about trying to prevent. It affects all of us in just our Medicaid spending. Certainly, we all want to know kind of what we can do. I don't think there's anything that any of us can sit here today and figure out this is how we fix it. But I think individually, there's things we can address. North Carolina is a state where everybody is mandated to report Adult Protective Services, not just professionals, but anybody who has any reason to suspect is mandated to report. There is certainly, this is an issue that many people don't know a whole lot about. I've spent the majority of my services here in Pitt County Social Services and Adults, and I am aware of the abuse and neglect issue with children, and I don't minimize that in any way, shape, or form, but this is an issue that so many people don't know about. We can all learn more about it. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and when I began preparing for today's presentation, I learned information. So we can all seek out information. It's rampant out there if we just Google it. Today we hope that we can raise your awareness about it, and this is National Adult Abuse Awareness Month, Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Purple ribbons is the ribbons for it. So what we hoped is that we could give each of you one to wear for yourselves and one for you to share with somebody else as you share maybe something that you've learned today or why this issue is important for all of us to consider. And it's important to be a sentinel. There's so many adults out there that we come in contact with, whether they be our neighbors or church members, and sometimes they aren't going to report for themselves. But the more that you kind of ask them about what may be going on and kind of be aware of what's happening with people around you and make those reports, because there may be something that we can offer them.
Can you tell us that number where we can report that so that we all know that?
Okay. During the day, the Department of Social Services always has somebody to receive reports. You contact the main number, 902-1101. There will always be somebody you can say, I'd like to make an Adult Protective Service report. Or even if you don't know if you need to make a report. If you say, I have a situation I'm concerned about, I don't know if I need to make a report, one of us will always talk with you. You'll receive an individual that is always there, that's knowledgeable about adult services, can take your information. If they don't know, they can ask and make contact back with you. You can, like you mentioned, they can make that report anonymously. It does sometimes take a little bit of time because North Carolina is very specific about what criteria. It is an invasive process sometimes when we need to go and ask people very personal questions, and the law says that it has to meet specific information before we can begin that process. So it does take a little bit of time, but it's as simple as picking up the phone. Even after hours, 24 hours a day, Department of Social Services has an on-call system where you can reach a social worker.
From calling that line periodically, you cannot, you specifically state you cannot leave a message on one of those lines for suspected elder abuse?
Right. What our operators do is they will try the phone number to the person who receives those calls. If the person is on the phone taking a report, they will keep calling around until they get a social worker that can receive those reports. But what will happen is people in the community may know not my name, Cynthia Ross, so they'll call mine. And we do ask that you don't leave a message because we need to determine whether it's something we need to speak about urgently, or we don't want any delay if I'm not in. But there are certainly people who maybe call our numbers directly, and we do encourage people to use the system that's in place because that way you have somebody immediately, and that's what we're there for, to make sure that these calls receive immediate attention.
Okay. Any other questions?
Good presentation, I enjoyed it. Very informative.
I'd like to leave y'all with one quote because this was important that I came across. I found some statistics about the federal dollars that are spent on abuse and neglect. 91% of those are spent in child abuse, 7% in domestic violence, and only 2% of those are spent on elder abuse. So I think in leaving you with this was a quote I found by Hubert Humphrey. He was the vice president to Lyndon Johnson. He said, "The moral test of a government is not only how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped, but also those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly."
Thank you. Thank you so much for preparing a report for us and for the community. All right. Moving along, we have a report now from Ms. Michelle McCorkle regarding our operations support for child progress. It's a progress report.
Okay. This will serve as an update for the Operation Support Your Child that was initiated by the Pitt County Sheriff's Office. It began on May 17th, and it will be ongoing until June 17th. Currently, the non-custodial parents, some non-custodial parents have voluntarily contacted our office attempting to resolve their child support matters to avoid having their pictures posted on TV or websites. The following number of civil process have been completed. Show causes were 116, warrants were 118, civil summons are 30. There are also 72 cases in which non-custodial parents have contacted our office in an attempt to have their orders for commitment recalled, and $26,000 has been collected thus far for warrants and recalls. This dollar amount does not reflect any payments that may have been made as payments in full for show causes for individuals that were detained at the detention center or that were paid at the magistrate's office, nor does it reflect any money that might have been collected from court appearances or payments mailed in by the non-custodial parents. Again, we encourage individuals to contact our office. Our number is 252-902-1300. And the program is ongoing until June 17th,
When did the program start?
May 17th.
So from May 17th to today, you've collected $26,000 above what people were already paying or what they were supposed to be paying.
Right. And again, that only reflects the individuals that may have contacted us in an effort to negotiate release from those that were being held at the detention center, or those that came in an effort to negotiate some sort of recall, to have a payment made and then their case continued.
It's interesting because I think it's 118, probably need new glasses. Yeah, 118 warrants. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of processing at the
Right.
courthouse level to try to recover the money. What were our expectations on the numbers? What were you expecting to see at this point?
The deputies had indicated that their goal for the warrants was at least 100 cases. So they have exceeded their expectations with that. In the past, they have done what we would call roundups before. What was different about this and why they called it an Operation Support Your Child is because they focused on all types of papers for civil process, that being any type of outstanding order for commitment, as well as the civil summons and the orders for registrations. So their goal was not only to focus on delinquent child support payments, but also to serve papers that would help initiate new child support orders as well.
And the Daily Reflector is running articles on the roundup, so if you receive the Daily Reflector, you get a chance to read those articles.
If you brought that down to a different data and you said, how much is outstanding? And we use the term $26,000 has been collected. Roughly, do we have an idea of what is owed? Is it 1 million, 2 million? And what did we hope during this? Has been a very big procedure, court-wise, deputy-wise, and everything. What did we hope, or did we have a goal that we hope to reach there in collections? Because all the collections go for the care of children or for whom it's taken up. Did we have a goal there, and kind of where are we?
With the total number of outstanding warrants that they had at the time when they initiated this project, the delinquent amount of child support was approximately $1 million. Okay. With this project, we didn't necessarily assign a dollar value as far as our goal, because we didn't know really what we were working with in terms of what response we may get, or didn't have any type of base to say this is what we've done before. In terms of to quantify, is $26,000 a good number? Is it not a good number? When you consider what individuals use the child support payments for, be it for their rent or to keep their utilities on, or ongoing utility bills paid, or perhaps even a science camp for their child during the summer. So to say, is it a lot or is it not, we're not necessarily in a position to be able to place a value on that dollar amount in terms of what it could have helped that family accomplish within their household. So
I guess
within
my
that,
question,
I think it's been
and I
successful.
think this is probably where you guys were going with this too, is, one of the things we find interesting is when we implement programs, what do we learn from having implemented the program? But the next time teaches us whether the construct works, because there are investments. There's an investment going into
Right.
getting that $26,000, and if we're pushing more warrants, we're pushing more cost to the county government to process. And I completely agree with you. $26,000 versus none,
Right.
obviously is very beneficial to those families. If there's $1 million outstanding that's delinquent, that you're trying to go after, and you get 26,000 of that, of that money, would that have been our expectations? Would we have expected the money to be more $400,000 because of the process? And how would you know that this is an efficient, good tool to use for recovering those kinds of dollars?
Okay, well, one thing I can speak to, and I don't know if perhaps PJ could help me more on the incentive return end of this. The monies that are collected reflect or are combined with what our state-assigned goals are. They also plan for this project to be, towards the end of the fiscal year, to help us obtain our incentive goals for the fiscal year. So monies that are collected can help us with our total goal, which is $13,960,000, our total goal of child support collections. But in addition, the civil summons, the orders that we hope to be able to have entered by this can help us with the upcoming fiscal year because we're entering orders for child support. In terms of dollars, the child support that we collect, the percentage of our goals that we reach gives us more incentive money back. And
This
PJ,
year's-
can you help me with that?
This year is about $235,000 has come back into Pitt County, which we have to reinvest back into the Pitt County child support program. But it's been $235,000 so far this year.
And also, child support is working with difficult to locate parents. So the focus is on individuals that they are having a hard time locating. So that's why they use this means of communication, the pictures, and the newspaper to get the community aware of the process. So hopefully that we could locate the absent parents that were not paying and then get them back into the child support system. So hopefully that this might be a one-time thing here, but to have an ongoing process where these absent parents will be paying monthly, working out an arrangement that maybe we need to look at the orders, might need to be reduced, but to begin the process of how can we make them on an ongoing basis to pay not just once a year or every other year. So that's the focus on this as well.
I was thinking that the follow-up will probably be pretty tremendous because I'm just guessing, over approximately a month, you collected $26,000. But what will happen is those people will be paying consistently. We now have an idea of where they are. So what will happen is that we'll be getting extra money, extra over this $26,000 over time, which will be good, and which won't be seen directly here,
Right.
but over time that'll work out a lot better.
Yes, and that would be our goal.
And I think that will explain, because when you look at it and the public has read how much it's been well publicized in the paper, how much deputy time and all of the things there, then certainly dollar for dollar look, minus these values that the message that you have to be responsible for your children and that there are processes. The process would be the importance, because I would think if you subtracted every cost, staff cost, against that, might not be anywhere near the figure it looks like, or might be below. But again, if it establishes, as Dr. Hamilton said, it establishes a system where people realize it can't just be avoided. There are consequences to it. And the ultimate goal is the dollars that turn up for the care and protection of children.
For the benefit of the children, yes.
That's the ultimate.
So what's next? What is the, in terms of getting at the further and further, what have we learned that we're going to replicate and push more for the remainder of that balance, 26,000 against the 1 million? There's more that we need to be getting back in the hands of those children. So what do you think, what do you see the next big step would be?
Well, I would think that our best bet for that would be to assess at the end of the project what we really did, where we are with the information that we have. Even with the idea of the civil summons, that's still a timely process, because once those individuals are served, there's amount of days that they have to respond before we're even able to track those types of things as well.
Mr. Mayor?
I think that would be, her response would be what sort of I would expect, that there would be a report once it is concluded and you begin to have time to weigh all of these intrinsic values. Maybe a number other than dollars is how many families are now back involved in some way with the care And maybe from there would come the program for the upcoming year of what to pursue and what is the best return.
All right, any other questions? Anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks
Thank
for,
you.
it's very educational for the public as well to see that this program, how it works and what its benefits have been. So thank you so much for being here today and presenting that.
Thank
you. Next on our list, we have Ms. Peggy Quinn, Ms. Dixon, and Brian Avert going to go over our goals and objectives.
Go first.
Yeah. Our first goal is to maximize the revenues and increase efficiency. And through the third quarter, we're up to about 65% of our reimbursements, and we're right on track to meet the goal. We have our reimbursement comes in a month behind, so that's why it's a little bit low, but it'll be coming in. We're on track. And if you look down and see that in the one of our other goals, compliance goals, was to go out and monitor daycare centers each year through looking at the fiscal compliance with it. We did not do any in the third quarter because our lady that does daycare broke her leg twice and was not here, so we had to focus all of our time into actually processing the daycare payments. But we'll get back on track of visiting the daycares hopefully next quarter. I hope to not spend all of the money that the county has. We've been managing our expenditures all year long, only buying essential things and trying to maximize the money we had. So hopefully, we will come in at a 90% spending. That means we would have saved some money for the general fund for next fiscal year.
All right. Any questions from school? You're saying, and so the sample size that you're using this year is 24 is your target? That's the
Yes, sir,
24 is-
24 daycares. Mhm.
which is down from 37,
Yes, sir.
10, and 11.
Yeah. Well, we were losing a staff member. One of the positions that we lost was in the.
So you just don't have the resources to do
And-
the
and we
numbers
also-
that,
we
is there a
also-
minimum number that we're supposed to do?
No, sir. This is just something, the state does not require us to do it at all. This is something
Okay.
the county has come
This
up
is
with.
something that's a benefit to our community then
For
that you
us.
all are providing.
Right.
That's great.
And we'll probably end up doing more than 24 by the end of the year, but
Great.
we did have a lull this quarter.
That's great. And that's important for our community to understand that the Social Services Department is in fact going above and beyond the requirement to make sure that the providers are, in the nursing homes, daycare centers in this case, are providing the level of services that they should be. So that's great.
The next 3 pages have to do with the Services Division. And as you know, in the Services Division, we look at achievements and outcomes for child welfare, for daycare, for adult services and prevention services. And I think one area on the second page, which is the third page of this set, I'd just like to draw your attention to under youth and children in DSS custody that are living in safe and permanent houses, safe and permanent homes. The second indicator down, annual percent of youth who achieve permanency through reunification within 12 months, meaning children who come into foster care. Our outcome goal is that, and that's a federal as well as a state, that they achieve some type of permanency within 12 months of coming into care. And I've shared with you over the past year about our participation in a pilot project with REAP with the state, which is Reaching for Excellence and Accountability in Practice. This is one of the areas that we have really put a focus on. We are starting to see some, of course, this is the end of the third quarter, but in March, we get outcome measures or outcome statistics at the end of each month. In March, that outcome was 37%. In April, it rose to 47.37%, and we maintained that in May. So we're really seeing some impact in our efforts in that area, so I'm really proud of staff. One of the other areas that we are focusing on is placement stability, especially for youth who have been in care quite some time. That's another area that we're focused on. So as far as the other outcomes in the services division, it appears that we're pretty much on track to meet those achievements by the end of this fiscal year. Any questions about the?
So pretty much everything you see here, you're comfortable will be on track to achieve the goals for the end of the year? Okay. Public assistance.
I'd like to highlight our Medicaid report card and our process and accomplishments. This would be on the third from the last, it's the third from the end of the goals and objectives section. And first, looking at medical assistance to the disabled, our goal or annual target is 90%. Through the third quarter, our average is 92%. While we are meeting the average, we are not consistently able to meet the 90% on a monthly basis. We did have a failure in the second quarter in October, and we have failed the report card for the month of May as well. The staff have done a great job, and our first focus is to get the applications processed timely, and staff have made a great effort to do this, but given the vacancies that we've had and have continued for a while to have, we're at a point now where we're not going to be able to consistently meet the 90% requirement. So I feel like with those positions being filled, we should show some improvement in that area and be able to make an effort and hopefully consistently meet the 90% target. The same goes for the other Medicaid category. The annual target is 90%, which is a state requirement, and we are at 90%. So we've been, with the efforts the staff have made, we've just been meeting the minimum requirement. And then the North Carolina Health Choice Program, which is a children's health program, that is looked at separately. There's a separate report card for that. We also failed that report card for the month of May, but our average for the 3 quarters is 94%, and our target's 90%. Also looking, if you skip the next page and go to the very last page, our child support figures, we have currently, as of the third quarter, 7,513 cases which are under order in child support. So we have for the 3 quarters, we were able to maintain an 88% average of cases under order. There are vacancies in child support as well, and this is an area that we'll work on coming closer to our 91%. Some of the vacancies were even though the positions were not vacant, we had people out on leave, so these vacancies go back several months, and I feel like that this, and in talking with the child support supervisor, Ms. McCorkle, whom you just heard, this has had an effect on our ability to have at least 91% of the cases under order. Although the positive side of it is our child support collections, and through the end of March for the year, the total collection is $10,614,563. So based on that rate of collections, we feel sure we'll meet our annual target of $13,150,000. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I guess I was impressed with that you were meeting things, but that with some of the loss of staff, you were far below. With this new budget coming out and having less staff, where do you think you'll be this time next year, given that you'll have to do the same kinds of things?
If we are successful in being able to fill the positions that have been kept in the budget, we should be able to show improvement in this area. I feel comfortable with the staff positions that are assigned in the current budget. once they're filled, then we should be able to be in a better position than we are at this time. But having them filled, getting people in, of course, if we can get experienced people, the learning curve is not long, and some of them can come in and go right to work. But if, some people are gonna require a certain amount of training, and sometimes we might hire somebody to work in an area. They've worked as an income maintenance caseworker, but maybe they haven't worked in the Medicaid program. So although they know the processes of doing income maintenance casework, they have to learn the policy of the Medicaid program. So it will take some time, but I'm happy with the position allocations that we have and the way the budget turned out.
Any other questions? I was curious, I think, kind of where Mr. Hamilton was going. 99% on food and nutrition, I think, is where you are for the quarter so far.
Right.
So it's the highest. That's
Correct.
also where all those frozen positions
Correct.
were.
And like Mr. Perry said, we're using the lead workers who normally do second-party reviews of cases, our internal monitoring process. Their focus has had to be client service,
Yeah.
and the focus is getting the applications processed as quickly as possible. So we've made a great effort, but the other side of it, we've not been able to do what we need to do in the other areas.
Well, that's where I was going to say, there's always a balancing act that obviously is going on here.
Correct.
Either there's a balancing act, or we were operating at a level of inefficiency before, that having these cuts and having gotten down to this number of people, we're actually more efficient than we have been in the past. And I'm wondering, Mr. Perry, if you have some idea of, have we gotten to a critical mass now that we're highly efficient and it's actually keeping
I would say that
things
we're
going
not
faster?
highly efficient. We have given up on second-party reviews on caseloads, so as far as the quality of the work that the caseworkers are putting out, there's no checking on that. So we're going to see more program integrity reports, because the workers are basically trying to get the work out, not reviewing their own lines to make sure that the information matches up with what the client says. So we have a more telephone
You're
call.
expecting to see more error, agency error
Yeah,
reports.
and if we ever get those two lead worker positions filled and they get back into reviewing the records, we will see more cases where maybe the policy is not right, where what the worker is doing, and we're not at the point that we can do that. So we had to give up second-party review in order to get the work out. And you have some workers that can work at a higher pace than others, and the filing and other things that need to go along with those records are not getting done. So the things that need to be done, we have, in order to get this part done, we allow something else to go undone. And with food and nutritional service, you only have 30 days to process a case. Family and Children Medicaid, you have 45 days. And so you have a shorter time frame in order to work. So we're trying to push that work out as far as acting on changes and different things. Those things are
So
not
you're
done.
describing a liability
Right.
from this, but that's kind of the questions we are most concerned. We keep,
Yeah.
everything you're showing would indicate that these shortages aren't having an impact
You got to
negatively on
realize
services,
that
but
there
there
are
must be
different parts.
something that is.
There are different parts of each program, and food and nutrition service, you have applications, you have reviews, you have changes. When you focus on one part, you're leaving the other two parts undone.
Right.
So we have to decide.
Are we
that-
measuring the impact of what is being undone?
Right. We know that our return averaging 55 cases being overdue in a given month, so those clients are not getting their cases on a timely basis. So we get calls from
So I
clients.
think
thinking,
kind of what we've been,
Yeah.
what we're concerned about is whatever it is that is not going to get done, that is what
Yeah.
we're hearing as a report that gives us
Yeah.
an idea, because otherwise it feels like we're able to hit all of our targets with all these shortages, and I don't know how.
Yeah.
I
And
think
just
that
like
that
we
help-
talked
that
about-
doesn't help us advocate, I think, appropriately. for
And just like we're
physicians.
talking about NC Fast, we know that once that start, that everything without those vacant positions being filled, and everything gonna slow back down, because therefore you got all staff learning a new program
Yeah, sure.
and having to do more work.
Right.
So we know that.
We talked about that
Yeah.
at the last meeting.
Yeah.
That would certainly be
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
will impact us. It seems like,
I
though,
think trends are more important.
yeah,
Maybe we as the board focus on trends
Yes.
more than just issues. We've mentioned NC Fast
Yeah.
several times and all, and I'm sure for you all, that's a massive undertaking. But then when we come up and when he asks, well, how much are we not doing? Are we not doing any double checks or the follow-ups? Are we doing 10% of what we would normally do? Because then that says what we advocate. I believe I heard Brian say that with the new budget, the positions that will be opened, some frozen positions, he believes he can maintain what would be not only first and foremost the services, but he can get back to the checks. Did I hear that
Yes,
correctly?
that is the goal, once all the positions are filled and the lead workers, they can return to doing more of what their job is intended to be.
Would we want to end up the year with, and not somebody wasting time on a massive report, but George, I think we would want some type of report of where are we? If we've been 4 months, and I'll just say we have, I don't know that this is accurate, but we haven't checked any cases, then yeah, to say, well, it may go up, that's general. That really hadn't said anything. How many cases would we have checked? How many have we not checked? And so how is our priority or our allocation for people going to be to bring the whole standard up? Understanding that there's always going to be changes. But I think we need to know something like that, because if we speak only in generalities, we don't have any idea how far we are. If we say, well, I'm doing one part, but 2 parts are not being done, that's awful general. And so are we, Brian, could you maybe tell us, are we 500 cases behind? Are we 5,000 cases behind in the double checks or the proofs? And what staff allocation will help us, maybe not to the first standards, but get back to a state-accepted flow and pattern.
Right, and basically the checking reports that we see are the reports that the state, the QC
Yes.
reports that they do, which we shared with the board at the budget workshop. Those figures, that's basically what we have to base the error rate on at this point.
Well, if we know that we're going to have problems, error rates or whatever, then on a global view, we need a plan for it. Some
We
sort of
will.
plan about how we will handle it.
Well, if we are able to fill the positions, our first focus will be on doing a 100% reviews of all the new people that we have. So they will be in training as well as learning, and we'll be doing 100% checking on those cases. So if you're looking at 7 new employees, they will hopefully, if we get experienced people, then the time that we spend training them would not be as long. But those would be 100%. Whatever they do, 100% of their work would be checked. Then we will look at our other workers doing a percentage, because I think in the policy, all the household 5 or over, those in food and nutrition service, household 5 or overs, those households are supposed to be second party review, which we're not doing. So we know what the policy is, but we're not able to follow those policies.
I think that if I could make a request, maybe just because you all understand both a language and a whole law and all that around this, that we simply don't know what some of those details really mean. But what I'm concerned about is the variance from what we thought was going to happen. And if things are at risk that you have in place, whether they're program integrity or whether they are audits and samples reviews, to make sure that, the job of the board is to make sure there's integrity among the use of the resources. And I think that we're just on a high level, what is that risk of things that won't get done because of that? And maybe at the next meeting, we can organize our thoughts better about that, but,
And one of the things that I'm hearing too is that y'all have thought about how to reach, if, for lack of better terms, that we have like a number to meet. We have this number to meet. Now, how can we be sure that we reach that number with our resources. And so you've allocated things so that we could reach whatever target that is. So we're still meeting the target, but what you've done is you've made a lot of changes, and we may not know, as example, how many errors that we've made, or we've moved this person from here or to there to do something different. And I'm really encouraged by the fact that you had a plan for that. I guess we as the board, we don't know that as well. We're not, understanding that as well with some of the language and some of the things in that.
And I don't think that we need to understand all that as much as just make sure that there's a stewardship of resources. But when we see the indicators all positive, it suggests that the resources, yes, you may have had to move them from point A to point B, but maybe that was a good thing, because you're still getting the job done with 33 less people, if I'm not mistaken, in this incumbent report. There's 33 vacant positions, and yet all the indicators are suggesting that we're on target. That's a good thing, and it speaks well to the ability to manage the department. It speaks well that the staff are doing a great job. But if there are no negative consequences, then it looks like the program is being right-sized and into the economy that it needs to operate within, unless there's something that is falling apart on the other side. But it obviously is not being managed here, because we don't see anything like that. So for me, at least, that's the impression that I'm getting, is that maybe we've reached the appropriate critical mass of individuals in different roles. Whether we've moved them around or not, I don't know and don't need to know. But the stewardship aspect of this would suggest that we are, from the indicators here, we're doing well.
And there weren't indicators that said, I think in our delivery of services, we don't want a bomb to ease up on us. We don't want to be building our own bomb. And, if we hear that, well, I'm doing one part and this is this measurement you're looking at, but there are two parts that we're just not doing. We're not double checking in households of 5, 3, or whatever. We wouldn't know that, but that sounds a lot like a bomb building, so I think we'd want to know that too. Hence, we ask, what is the plan for allocation of new people coming in? Not so much just how you gonna work them, not by individual title position, but how will we limit that liability and thus make sure we serve out there? It's hard for me to understand.
I look at it as a good thing. I think that it would suggest that the team's doing a good job managing with less resources and getting the outcomes that are required to get.
And I could see that because the numbers all look so good, but yet still knowing there are fewer people. And what that means is that you've made some changes and you've triaged it so that we know what's going on. Okay, we have to look back at some things to see that we have to do these things, either catch up, errors, et cetera, et cetera.
Great. All right, any other questions, any other comments around the goals and objectives? Okay, all right. With that, Mr. Perry, Director's Report.
In the Director's Report, you have a letter from the state concerning non-emergency medical transportation compliance reviews. In the upcoming year, there will be a review of all 100 counties Department of Social Services looking at Medicaid transportation. And this is, only thing you have is just the process timeline. There is a workbook that's 25 pages that staff will be working on compiling the information that we can compile so that when we are asked to respond, that we will have the majority of the information already completed, except the cases that they will be asking for. So we're in the process of just gathering that information to make sure that we are following the policies that has been implemented beginning back in February of 2012.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Perry? All right, at this time, we do have a need to go into closed session to discuss an air agency report and a personnel matter. I'd ask at this moment if you could read the statute for us, please.
North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11 regarding closed sessions. Section A, permitted purposes. It's the policy of this state that closed sessions shall be held only when required to permit a public body to act in the public interest as permitted in this section. A public body may hold a closed session and exclude the public / only when a closed session is required. Also, item number 1, to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of this state or of the United States, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes.
Okay. May I have a motion, please, to go into closed session?
I make a motion, we go into closed session.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're in closed session.